So if you think burnout looks like collapsing at your desk or taking stress leave, think again. For most executives, burnout doesn't look like a breakdown. It looks like high functioning chaos. You're still making decisions, you're still hitting your goals, you're still leading your teams, but inside, you're running on fumes, feeling disconnected, and dangerously close to crashing, but no one sees it. That's why we're here today. We need to talk about what burnout actually looks like in executive life. Welcome back to the Executive Exhale channel. My name is Tammy. I'm an executive wellness coach, a former public health leader, and the creator of the Exhale method. I've lived from burnout from inside out, and I now get to guide high-performing leaders through their experience with either burnout or stress impacts without having them have to give up everything they've built. So in this video today, I want to break down what executive burnout really looks like, because it's not the extreme version that everybody thinks of. It's a slow burn, and it's a version that usually creeps up quietly, and it gets mistaken for normal stress. If you're in leadership right now, there's a really good chance that you're closer to burnout than you even realize. I struggled with the insidiousness of the impacts of stress and burnout for years before I came to the conclusion that I needed to really address this. Here are some things that people often miss that can be a sign that you're going in that direction. Burnout often shows up like this. You're more irritable, but you call it impatience or being efficient. You find yourself waking up at 3 a.m., but you're chalking it up to just having a busy mind, lots on your mind. You show up to every meeting every day, but you feel emotionally numb or disconnected from your team. Maybe you're an absentee leader. You don't know or want to make any more decisions. You're eating whatever is fastest, skipping workouts, or even drinking more, but rationalizing that it's all about balance or coping. Maybe you've lost all your creativity, but you're still checking the boxes at work, so no one really notices. That's what happened to me. I was spending a lot of time complaining, drinking alcohol, eating foods that weren't good for me. It resulted in a 40, 50-pound weight gain over a few years. It resulted in me being depressed, being exhausted, and feeling just like my life was completely upside down. And yet I had to hide that from everybody and keep my mask on, because if I didn't, one, I wouldn't function, and two, the people who depend on me would get nervous, and three, my performance reviews would get really poor at work. So I couldn't take the risk that that would be impacted. So I kept the mask going, and I kept coping until I couldn't cope anymore. This is what I call functional burnout. You're still performing, you're still on, but your inner world is dimming, right? In many places and in many cases, you're rewarded, unfortunately, for this. You're praised for your drive, right? Your dedication. While your nervous system is screaming for relief, you're promoted. So why do executives miss this? Why is it so hard to see this in ourselves? Because leaders, especially high performers, have been trained to override their physical, physiological, and mental signals. Right? We've built careers on resilience and pushing through and getting it done. Right? Stress becomes a default state. Exhaustion becomes the norm. And the more successful you get, and the higher you go, and the more money you make, the more pressure there is to sustain it. Let's be clear. When you're an exec, no one is telling you to slow down. You're expected to always be on. You're the one others lean on. So when you feel drained and unmotivated and emotionally flat, you think, what's wrong with me? Why can't I figure this out? How come I can't manage this? Why can't I deal with stress? But let's be clear, burnout is not a personal flaw. In fact, it's a systems problem. It's a lack of systems or a systemic failure in your life. One that lives in your calendar, your beliefs, your environment, and your body. And the longer it goes unnoticed, the more damage it does. Burnout and the impacts of stress show up in the body long before they become headlines in your head. So how does it feel? Oftentimes you can have symptoms like tightness in the chest or shallow breathing. You might feel like you're constantly on edge. You might feel like there's a big weight on your shoulders, or like the whole world feels heavy. Maybe you have extreme fatigue. You're exhausted. You're not getting any rest. Even though you sleep all night, you still don't wake up rested. I had signs of depression and anxiety, palpitations, headaches, neck pain. There's all sorts of things, including things like emotional numbness and the sense of wanting to isolate and be by yourself. It's your nervous system stuck in survival mode. Emotionally, this can show up as resentment towards your role, towards your team, towards your family, right? Which is immediately followed by guilt and potentially anxiety for how you've behaved. If you're anything like I was, I felt isolated and cynical, and I felt lost, like I lost a part of myself somewhere along the way. And I felt like my life just wasn't going in the direction I wanted it to. And I felt like I had no control over anything going on around me. It was almost as if somewhere midlife, I realized that I had built this big, successful career, but I wasn't happy and didn't feel fulfilled and felt miserable and exhausted. Like I had the money, but I didn't have the time to do the things I wanted to do. So all of these symptoms, all of these things, they're not weaknesses. They're indicators. They're signals from your body and your mind and your heart. They're trying to protect you. So when you lead from burnout, that cost is high. Your decision-making suffers. You lose clarity. You start reacting instead of responding to things. The team around you will feel that energy. And even though you're saying and doing all the right things, what you'll find is your culture will quietly deteriorate over time. People will start leaving your team. Innovation will start drying up. Maybe your at-home relationships will become strained. Pretty much every client I've ever had has had issues with their marriage or their relationships because of their own burnout experience or because of their stress loads. Many of the leaders that I've worked with complain that they just don't have enough time to spend with their kids, and they feel guilty that they're not spending any time with their children while they still have them at home. A lot of times you're physically there, but you're just not available emotionally, right? You lose the spark that you once had, not just in your life, but in your job, in everything that you do. Nothing fuels you anymore. And burnout also affects your health physically. It erodes the very foundation of what you do, who you are, how you behave, and ultimately can erode your leadership and your career. But here's the truth. You do not have to keep surviving like this. And you do not have to blow up your whole life or walk away from everything to start healing. The first step is just awareness, right? Getting a sense of where you are right now and how stress and burnout might be affecting you and impacting your life. To any change, that is always the first step, right? So take a moment and pause and ask yourself these questions. Where am I compensating in my life instead of caring? Where am I pretending to be fine where things are not? If nothing changes, where does this path end? And you got to get real true about that with yourself. Does it mean that if you don't change things, your relationship will be, irreversibly changed? Maybe it means a divorce. Maybe it means you get demoted. Whatever it is, what's the end game if you don't change? Maybe you die. Maybe you have a heart attack and you drop dead. What is the price of you not addressing what's going on in your life right now? The truth is there is a path to healing, not to the version of you that can tolerate more pressure, more stress, but to a version of you that can really lead with clarity, with confidence, and a calm center. That's why I created a system called the Exhale Method, because it's a structured approach to help you, the high-level leader, right, who's burning out, who's completely exhausted from the impacts of stress, who's falling apart on the inside, right, but still showing up on the outside. There are 6 powerful pillars that I work with leaders on, and it's to help them build their resilience from a physical perspective, a mental perspective, emotionally and strategically. It's not just about bubble baths and time off. It's about learning to lead yourself first so you can lead everything else in your life better. So if you think that this is where you are and you are craving something different, something better, something healthier, check out my links down below because I might be able to help you out. Know that you're not alone if you're struggling with this. I've coached a number of leaders now who are struggling with stress. I myself have been burned out. I quietly would tell my friends and family, I don't know how long I can keep this up. And I've watched leaders completely change their lives and reclaim their well-being by reconnecting to their purpose and finally feeling like themselves again because they're choosing to take on things that fill them rather than drain them. If you think you're ready for real recovery and transformation and you want to lead and live differently, again, check out my links down below. I have links to my calendar that you can get into, or there are links to go to my website. I can support you in that journey if that's something that you're looking for. And if you got anything out of this episode and are ready to start living a life less impacted by stress, either as a leader or however else, subscribe to this channel. This is where we talk honestly about what it means to not only lead well, but to do so without losing yourself in the process. Until next time, folks, stay grounded, stay inspired, and remember to exhale.